What's going on, guys? It's Zach here. Bring you guys with a fantasy football video. This will be going over the Thursday night football game in Week 10 between the Carolina Panthers and Chicago Bears. I'll be sort of going position by position and sort of previewing what you guys should expect from each of those players and sort of giving you sort of the fantasy football lowdown in terms of which players should and shouldn't be in your fantasy lineup, sort of what you can expect from each player in that game. Obviously, it's not exactly a super high octane game here. We're not getting anything special between the Panthers and Bears. They've got 3 wins between them. The Bears own both first round picks between the two teams next year, so really there's just nothing on the line in this game. Not a whole lot that matters outside of what we're doing in fantasy here. So hopefully we at least get a fun scoring game. A lot of times, often you'll see these two really bad teams meet, and sometimes you get a sneaky shootout. That's sort of what I'm hoping for. But the over/under is 39 points in this game. Not expecting to be, at least Vegas isn't expecting there to be a lot of offense. So overall, there shouldn't be too much fantasy relevance here, but still football. I'm still going to watch it for sure. And if you're watching these videos, you probably will be watching as well with me. Uh, so players that we got to consider to make sure we get our lineup set. As always, I want to just put out this friendly reminder that if you have a player that you're going to be playing on Thursday Night Football, make sure you don't have them in your flex spot. Make sure you're utilizing that wide receiver or running back spot so that you leave yourself that flexibility for later on in the week. Don't play DJ Moore in your flex, for example. You want to make sure he's in the wide receiver spot so that if you have a player get hurt later on in this week, you haven't utilized that flex spot and really limited your options. So that being said, let's just sort of get into the quarterbacks here. It should be hopefully a fun game. So I'll start things off at the quarterback position with Bryce Young for the Carolina Panthers. There's just no way you're starting him. He's looked absolutely awful so far all season. He had like one decent game against the Houston Texans, but even that wasn't very fantasy relevant at all. You can throw on the Chicago Bears, so I do understand that the matchup's a little bit favorable, but you can also throw on the Indianapolis Colts, and we saw how that went last week. Bryce Young turned the ball over 3 times. He's been absolutely brutal against zone, which the good news is the Bears do run a lot of man defense, so the area that Bryce Young has struggled against the most isn't necessarily going to be rearing its head this week, although if the Bears are smart, they'll play a lot of zone this week as well. I'm starting to be worried for the Panthers. They might have just made a really horrible mistake. Coming into the offseason, I was really a big fan of CJ Stroud. I was surprised Bryce Young ended up being the #1 overall pick, and I think the Panthers really made a big mistake. They traded a first or two first round, basically their 2 first round picks this year, or yeah, they traded a first round pick this year, DJ Moore, and their first round pick next year to get Bryce Young. That first round pick next year is easily going to be the 1 overall. They probably traded Bryce Young and or they probably traded Caleb Williams a first and DJ Moore to get Bryce Young. So really bad move by the Carolina Panthers. Hopefully I'm wrong. I think Bryce Young still got a shot to end up being relevant, but it just doesn't look good for him at this point, and there's no way that I'm playing him in Week 10 here. Tyson Bagent, super unfortunate still. We're not going to be able to get to see Justin Fields just yet this week. He practiced some this week, but just isn't going to be able to suit up. So we'll be waiting for Week 11 to see Justin Fields suit up. With Bagent, I know he played really well last week, sort of surprised people and actually put up a really high-end fantasy performance last week, but there's just no way I'm going to start Bagent in this game. You can throw in the Carolina Panthers. They're not a matchup that's necessarily scary, but I just don't want to do it. I know there are a lot of quarterbacks on bye this week, but I just think there are better options. I'd much rather play guys like Joshua Dobbs, Derek Carr, Geno Smith, Sam Howell. If you are in that streaming category, there's just a lot of better options available on waivers, so I don't really see myself even looking at either quarterback this week. Next, we've got the running back position here, and I'll start things off with Chuba Hubbard. I think that I'm actually still genuinely worried that this is going to be Miles Sanders' job when everyone is healthy. We saw Miles Sanders look a little bit better last week. He looked to be a little bit more explosive, and he's just still dealing with that groin injury. On a short week, I don't think we're going to see a fully healthy Miles Sanders here, so still think Chuba probably outsnaps Miles Sanders and outplays him this week. And given that it is a plus matchup against the Chicago Bears, I think you can play Chuba Hubbard, but there is going to be that concern in my head that if you do that, you could easily see Miles Sanders just take the rollback, and then Chuba Hubbard goes right into being a backup running back on a bad team. So he's a really low-end running back 2 option for me. I obviously wouldn't be starting him with any sort of confidence, but if you've got a lot of bot players on bye or you're dealing with a bunch of injuries, I think you can look at Chuba Hubbard. He's just not someone that I'd be starting with like a smile on my face. I wouldn't be expecting anything super exciting here from him. Miles Sanders, don't drop him, but don't play him either. Like I said, I do think this ends up being his job once everyone is healthy. They paid him that money. Money does talk in the NFL. It's sort of that sunk cost fallacy, but the Panthers are going to want to utilize Miles Sanders when he's fully healthy. I do think he is their best running back as well when healthy. So I still think Miles Sanders ends up potentially giving you guys some fantasy value later on in the season, but I just not going to be playing him this week. I just want to see him get those snaps back in his hands before he actually gets into my fantasy football lineups. I think here's where things kind of get a little bit more interesting for Chicago. There's still a lot TBD here. I'm recording this at about 5 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday night, so we still don't have all of the information in terms of which running backs are even going to be active with the Chicago Bears. Khalil Herbert, who's been on IR, is eligible to come off of IR and play as soon as this week. It sort of sounds like that's where things are trending, so I do expect Khalil Herbert to potentially suit up in this one, and if that happens and Deonta Foreman ends up being active, I don't think I really want to start any of these guys. I think it could very easily be a situation where we see Deonta Foreman and Khalil Herbert sort of splitting the rushing downs, and then we see Roschon Johnson come in on passing downs. And anytime you're in a three running back timeshare, it's really hard for anybody to contribute value on a reliable basis. So in that scenario, I don't think I'd be playing anybody. But in the other two scenarios, one being Khalil Herbert comes back and the Bears go right back to what they were doing with Deonta Foreman on the bench, not even being an active player because he's not really a guy that can contribute on special teams. If that happens, I think I'd be really comfortable starting Khalil Herbert. It is, again, a really plus matchup against the Carolina Panthers. They can't defend the run at all, and Khalil Herbert looked really good prior to going down with injury. So if Deonta Foreman is inactive and Khalil Herbert suits up, you're probably playing Khalil Herbert. He'd be like a solid running back two start for me. I'd be pretty excited about getting him in my lineup. And then if Herbert misses this game, I think that makes Deonta Foreman a reasonable start as well. Sort of a little bit lower value here than what I would expect out of Herbert if Deonta Foreman were to miss, but Foreman's looked really good so far. It's sort of a revenge game for him as well. He obviously played for Carolina last season. I think I'd be playing Deonta Foreman in a week where Khalil Herbert ends up missing. But like I said earlier, if Khalil Herbert is active and Deonta Foreman is active, I'm probably sitting everyone. And then regardless of who's active, I think I'm sitting Roschon Johnson. He's just not involved enough. I think he is an explosive player. I do like the talent, but he's just not involved enough right now for me to consider playing him in fantasy. Next up, we've got the wide receivers here, and I'll start things off with Adam Thielen for the Carolina Panthers. He's still like a wide receiver two for me. I'm definitely going to get Adam Thielen into my lineups. Like I said, this is a plus matchup against the Chicago Bears, and I know it's sort of been a down performance for the last couple of weeks for him after their bye. He was actually okay 2 weeks ago, caught 8 passes, just didn't score a touchdown. But the fact of the matter is, he really is all this Carolina Panthers offense has in terms of their passing game. He's by far the most reliable target, and I can't imagine sitting him, even though he obviously has sort of disappointed over the last couple of weeks. I'd bench every other Panthers pass catcher, though. I know I talked up Jonathan Mingo last couple of weeks, the guy that I'd be rostering. I still think you can roster him in hopes that Bryce Young takes a step forward, but if Bryce Young keeps playing at the level he's been playing, there's just no way that he can support two pass catchers. You need an injury to Adam Thielen to really trust him, but I do think Mingo's a talented player. If you want to keep rostering him, you can, and then you can drop DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, all those other ancillary pieces for sure. After that, for the Chicago Bears, we've got DJ Moore playing up against his former team. I think he's a low-end wide receiver two for me. He just really hasn't done anything since his obviously blow-up performance on Thursday Night Football. Of course, I talked about him as a sell high right before that blow-up performance on Thursday Night Football, but at least I've sort of redeemed myself over the last 4 weeks. He hasn't been a top 20 wide receiver in any of those weeks since then, so maybe it's just a little bit about a week early on that sell high call, but he is always one big play away from putting up a big number. He just needs one touch to put up a big fantasy performance for you guys, and he is again going up against a favorable matchup. The Carolina Panthers are not a scary defense, although they don't really give it up through the air just because they get beat on the ground so much that teams don't need to pass against them. But I don't really know that the Bears can blow out the Carolina Panthers by any means. This should be a relatively competitive game, so I think we'll see the Bears pass enough that DJ Moore should be in lineups for sure. Just understand that there is always a very low floor for him, or really any pass catcher for the Chicago Bears. And then I'll mention Darnell Mooney. He had a nice little week last week, caught like 5 passes, had 82 receiving yards. Don't play him. I don't want to play. I hardly even want to play DJ Moore this week, so definitely not going to play the number two option in this offense for sure. And finally, we've got a couple of tight ends to talk about here. I'll start things off with Hayden Hurst of the Carolina Panthers. He really hasn't had a good game since week one. He scored a touchdown in week one. Really hasn't done much since. He did have a really nice play last week, had a 48-yard reception. Definitely not going to be playing him, though. It's just not this environment where I'd expect a whole lot of big performances out of any pass catcher over the Panthers outside of potentially Adam Thielen. He just isn't involved enough. You can't really play Hayden Hurst unless you're doing some sort of DFS dart throw. And then Cole Kmet, he's extremely touchdown dependent, but the way the tight end landscape's set up, I think you probably just want to play him. Like I said earlier, the Panthers can get beat through the air. Tyson Bagent's been pretty, or not vocal, but it's very clearly a guy that he wants, or Cole Kmet's very clearly a guy that Bagent looks for in the red zone. We saw Cole Kmet make 2 really nice plays last week, scored 2 touchdowns. Kmet's certainly a really talented red zone threat at this point, and I mean, with how bad the tight end position is, I think you're probably just playing Cole Kmet this week and hoping for another touchdown, but obviously if you don't get that touchdown, you're going to be disappointed. But like I said, I still think you're playing Cole Kmet this week. So that'll do it for this week's Thursday Night Football Primer. Hopefully we get a bit of a more competitive, more exciting fantasy game or just football game in general than what I'm expecting. Probably going to end up just being a low-scoring game between two bad teams, but hopefully we see some better football than that, some more entertaining football. Hopefully the Stars at least show up and put up some big performances for us. Up next on Saturday morning, you guys will be getting the start sit video where I'll go over every single other matchup in Week 10, go position by position, and sort of talk about which players should and shouldn't be in your fantasy lineups. So if you want to make sure you get access to that video, all you've got to do is be subscribed to the channel. We're at about 930 subscribers right now. I would love to, and I've had a goal for a while of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I know a lot of you guys watch these videos and maybe haven't subscribed. Maybe you don't even know that you're not subscribed. So just feel free to check out or just take a look. Make sure that you are subscribed. If you're not, do click that subscribe button. That'll make sure you don't miss any other videos the rest of the season. Sunday morning as well, I'll be doing the Sunday morning live stream 1 hour before the early morning games kick off. So that'll be like around the fourth quarter of the game in Germany this week. So if you want to make sure you can get access to that, that's where I'll be going over any sort of last minute injury updates, sort of helping you guys answer any start sit questions that you have at the last second and help you guys get your lineup set. Just again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You get a notification whenever I go live, and that'll help make sure that you guys can tune in when you want to. So really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving. It's been a lot of fun for me making these videos, and we're really getting into that home stretch here. So hopefully you guys can start racking up some wins, get yourself into the playoffs, and then we'll start getting those rosters positioned to really dominate come those playoffs. So really appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.